You start a list with a day with a plan. You don't plan, you plan fail. You have to have a plan. And there's basic things that you do. I mean, I get up every day. This is what I do at the beginning of the day. What your plan is executed at the beginning. It's the first step going in the right direction. And if you can execute the first step going in the right direction, that's the best thing ever. And so I get up every day and I have a routine that I do. I get up, I get quiet, I pray, I meditate, I go to the gym, and then I go to work. That's what I do. Boom, boom, boom. And a predictable plan creates reliability. It creates trustworthiness. Guess what? In you, in your work. So that's the greatest thing you do is have a plan and take one step, first one going in the right direction.
Welcome to Limitless, the podcast for cycle breakers, change makers, and conscious leaders who are done performing, proving, and pleasing, and are ready to live, lead, and create from deep alignment. I'm your host, Fiona Walsh. Every 2 weeks, I hold space for real soul-expanding conversations with guests who are still in it. They're navigating their biggest fears, shedding old identities, letting go of patterns that no longer serve them, and rising into their limitless potential. Together, we share what it's really like to be human. Messy, raw, imperfect, and learning to own every part of ourselves, even the ones we've tried to keep neatly tucked away. We go deep into the work of coming home to yourself, getting out of your head, feeling safe in your body, letting go of old stories, and creating a life that's true to who you really are. Subscribing to Limitless is the best way to make sure you never miss an episode. So hit pause and tap follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Because this isn't about doing more. It's actually about remembering who you are. And that's what makes you limitless. Welcome to Limitless. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Sherwood, a naturopathic doctor, a former SWAT officer, and a powerful cycle breaker who has devoted his life to helping people heal at the root. What I find so resonant about Mark's story is how deeply it mirrors the essence of my inner freedom method. It's the invitation to meet what's been running your life, the armor, the patterns, the pressure, and choosing a new way of being that's more true, more grounded, and more alive. Through the Functional Medical Institute, which he co-leads with his wife, Mark helps people move beyond the surface and the symptoms, beyond the numbing, the over-medicating, or overriding what their body is trying to say. And he listens deeply. He traces the story underneath the symptoms, and he gets to the root of why we feel stuck, sick, quietly burnt out, and physically, emotionally, and spiritually misaligned. It's work that aligns so closely to the heart of my own because both of our modalities are different, but I feel like our philosophy is the same, that healing does not come from managing symptoms, but from meeting the deeper truth underneath them all, that the body holds the wisdom, that trauma, disconnection, and chronic stress and burnout leave imprints, and that true transformation starts by reclaiming ownership of how we live, lead, and relate to ourselves. This episode is for anyone who's outgrown the life they built from pressure and is ready to build a new one from peace. Mark, I'm so glad you're here today. Let's dive in.
Fiona, I'm glad to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this. Honored to be with you.
Thanks so much. Okay, can you take us to that moment in your life, that turning point or breaking point where you stopped and thought, something's got to change? And what was it? And tell me all about it.
Well, I go back to 2002. So we're talking going back, more than 2 decades ago. And at the time, I was on the police department, on the SWAT team. And at the same time, I was traveling around the world in what was the world-renowned power team, breaking bricks and talking to people, students at school. I've been on every continent. And we had an anti-suicide, anti-bullying, making good choices campaign going on. And I thought I was making a good difference. And so I suppose I was. But you kind of let a little bit of an us versus them mentality get in. It's not my life, it's their life. And probably some of it on the police department affected me too, a little bit, and put it all together. And I was in a place in my life where I probably thought more of myself than I needed to. That thing, ego can get in there, a little bit of arrogance, I suppose. And I came back to town after one trip, and I'd been back about a day, and I had to go out to an area on a river where there was the police had blocked off the scene out there, and there was obviously a crime scene of sorts, right? And I'd found out that day that my own mother had jumped off that bridge to commit suicide. And Fiona, it shocked me. It was the moment in my life where it's like, what went wrong? I'm telling other people not to do it, and yet here it is in my own life. It could happen to somebody else. It could never happen to me, but here I was, the center of attention in this deal, and someone that I love very dearly had taken the mentality that I told everybody not to do. Don't let a temporary problem become a permanent solution. And yet that's what happened that day. And that shifted my whole life around that day, because it hit me harder than anything else because it was real and it was personal. And it shifted the way I perceive things, realizing that I'm no better than anybody else, and that people that maybe are doing good things can make bad decisions. And it really is not us versus them. It's us, all of us. I had to look at my own self and go, you know what? I need to begin to understand that I'm capable of anything. That I'm just one breath away from being an idiot or a blessing, one word away from being an encourager or someone that just takes life away. And so that was the moment, and it shifted for me, and I haven't been the same since. Now, have I got it all figured out? No, but I'm working at it daily.
Yeah, beautiful. And if we go back to that point in time, you mentioned that you're a little bit, maybe your ego was online, you're a little bit arrogant. Do you now look back at that as being like a protective mechanisms for you to cope with what you were going through? And seeing
Probably.
and hearing?
Yeah, I'd say so, because, when you're a police officer, and you're on the SWAT team, you have the best equipment, the best training, and you're at the most dangerous situations. If you come out alive, you get feeling pretty good about yourself, which I suppose some of that is probably okay. And then at the same time, realizing that I had to deal with my own life. What was it that made me go that direction? I was an only kid. I was adopted, and I probably felt like I had to prove something. And I think that got into my life. And it's like when arrogance gets in there, you stop seeing your own faults. You stop seeing your own tendencies to make mistakes, and you start seeing everything else as them and not me. And and that probably, I don't like to admit it, but that painful moment was one of the greatest things of a learning lesson that I've had in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. And can you let me walk through how you were actually feeling in your body in that moment when you found out about your mom?
Well, it's like, I remember the day very, very well. October 19th, 2002. And I remember the day because it was raining and cold. Had a little mist rain going on. It was about 50 odd degrees, and everybody had jackets on, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel cold. Didn't feel hot. Didn't feel anything. I was just kind of a numb. You're like walking on the ground, and it's like you don't feel your feet.
Yep.
You're looking around. You don't know what to say. Or, you don't know what to think. Your just mind is completely gone. You cry. You yell. You do all of it. You talk to self, and you don't know who to talk to. You can't hear. The wind was blowing that day, but I didn't hear it. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel anything. And now this is me, and I don't claim to say this is the right way to handle everything, but this is what happened that day in my non-feeling. I got, my mother had parked her car there on the bridge, right? And she jumped off and left in the car her driver's license and her hearing aids. And I don't know why, I probably never know why, but it blew my mind. And I looked at that, I felt it, I touched that, and I was sitting in her car by myself, and people looked at me, and I know they probably thought I'd lost my mind. Is this guy, what's he doing? What's he thinking? Nobody knew what to say, because I was one of the top people in my profession. And people probably were somewhat timid about approaching me and saying anything, because what are you going to say? How are you going to make it better? But this is after it. I got out of the car and I had everybody, and this is me again. I made everybody there stop what they're doing and join hands in a big old circle. True story. And I prayed out loud that day. And it's hard because it brings back emotion. And I just asked God to show me what I was supposed to learn from this. And so somehow in this deal, there could be something good happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I think that shifted something in me that day, Fiona. It just, it was a peace that I cannot explain, that sort of engulfed my very soul. It changed me emotionally. It changed me spiritually. It changed my heart. And I probably needed some rearranging going on, but it did. And it was something that was powerful. I'll never forget that day. And I still get emotional thinking about it, talking about it. But it was real and tangible for me that day. That's what went on in my whole body, went in my whole life. And I don't, at that moment in time going forward, I really don't remember what happened next, quite honestly, because it was just gone. And I still deal with that. I still remember that no moment. So you asked what the pivotal moment, that threshold moment, that cliffhanger moment, that has to be it, because it was that thing, that time where time stopped.
Yeah. It's what's coming through for me around is like, particularly for, I know people who work in police or emergency services, there's an element of armor and protection that you have to put around yourselves. Otherwise, you couldn't show up to work every day, and you would have been exposed to a lot of trauma, and can only imagine. And even just hearing stories, when you're out with young, teenagers and hearing about what life is really like for them. I mean, some of that stuff is just heartbreaking, and most people would disassociate or numb or armor up, as I said. And it sounds like this moment, which was such a great loss for you, losing your mum, but it actually ripped this armor open. And so you were really feeling for probably the first time in a long time.
I think that's accurate. I think it stripped the armor right off. I mean, my heart was laying bare out there. And what happens is, I think that a lot of people don't understand about law enforcement or first responders or military. You have to dissociate. You have to sort of compartmentalize things, or you can't survive, because you see things that no person should see, and you experience things that no person should experience, but you do it for other people so they don't have to experience that. Right. And it's like you're standing in that gap out there, and then you try to go home and try to live a normal life while everybody else is oblivious to what you just went through. And they don't understand that every time you get out there and, conduct a traffic stop on a car or go to a call, that it goes in your mind and you think about this. You think, I could die, but you protect yourself so much that you won't. And it's the same thing. And it's a unique situation. A lot of people want to criticize law enforcement or first responders, and they don't understand what I just said. But I encourage people that are even listening right now, if you see a first responder out, go thank them, or go buy them something to drink, buy them a coffee, buy them a meal, and just tell them how much you appreciate them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. And one of the people I had on the podcast actually, at the end of last year, Mark, she is a EMDR therapist here in Vancouver, and one of her missions now in her work under shift change, and I'm going to put this in the show notes, because if we've got first responders listening, they run virtual sessions where you can jump on and they can help you process recent trauma, particularly when it's recent, but you can also go backwards. All trauma is resolvable, but you need to be with the right practitioner. I'll put Kara's details for shift change in the show notes, because we are in a different world at the moment. And I am I have so much hope for first responders that they are going to get the support to close these trauma cycles in the moment, so they don't have to armor up, as you said, and that doesn't need to be part of an acceptable part of how you do your job in order to survive.
They need to have those resources, because when I was there, we didn't. I mean, we had some, but it wasn't to the level it is right now.
Yeah.
And I see, I mean, the suicide rates are still enormously high, and that's not okay. So, I, like you, think that putting resources out for people to reach out to is the biggest deal. And my advice for any law enforcement on here: if you feel like there's a problem, have the courage to reach out. That's not cowardice. That's actually
No,
the
it's not
greatest
weakness.
courage you can do right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So share with us, Mark, like you had this big turning point moment. And I know at some stage you had a full 180 shift of career and life mission and everything. So walk us through, like, how did you get to from there to where you are today?
Well, I was transitioned shortly thereafter. A couple years later, I was transitioned to the police academy, where I was put in charge of instruction of new recruits,
Mhm.
training, background investigations, the hiring, firing, that kind of stuff. And I was also tasked with developing a wellness program that didn't exist. And so, I'd always kind of been into health, and I started studying and started looking at it. And there was one statistic that absolutely blew my mind, and it's still this truth today. And this is back in about 2000 and, I don't know, 6 or 7, something like that. But it was a study from the FBI from the 1960s that stated the average police officer's death age was 66 years of age after 20 years of service. And I thought, okay, well, surely that's changed now. So I did the data for my own county and my own state at that point in time, and it was the same, actually 1 year less. And this is recently, this is just like a week and a half ago, my wife asked me this question: do you think the studies were still the same? And I read another study, and 1 week ago, it was the exact same across the United States. And that shifted it, because I thought, Fiona, there's something is wrong here with all these men and women giving all their lives like this. What is causing that? And I kind of went on a mission to find out.
Mhm.
And I discovered quickly that many of them were on blood pressure medications, anti-anxiety medications, diabetes medications, sleep medications, et cetera, et cetera. And they were all gaining weight. And I thought something is amiss. So I started studying to determine how we could change that, from the inside out. Then in my studies, I quickly observed that the problems that I was observing in their life was rapidly happening to every single person in society these days. Chronic high stress, lack of sleep, multiple things that people were doing, this social media just hitting, and that was early days of that. Just constant bombardment of stimulatory actions and no exercise, not eating right, etc. And I went on a mission because I didn't want to see suffering of mankind occur anymore. That's the truth. It really went right through me. I thought, how can people not have the opportunity to know what I'm knowing right now? And so I started studying. And much like that movie Forrest Gump, who kept on running, I kept on studying.
Mhm.
And I thought, why not? I believe in the idea of determining what causes symptoms and how do you fix them versus just medications, because I saw it didn't work. I mean, I'm not anti-medication, but it just wasn't it's not the only therapy you can consider. And it's certainly not the main one. It's a last line therapy, the way I look at it. And so that what got me started down the pathway of going back to school in my 40s. Who does that? Despite all my colleagues telling me I was crazy and I must have had some kind of PTSD moment. But I was determined to do something about it, and I didn't look back. And shortly thereafter, I'd reached the point I was almost done with my studies, and I met my wife. And it was really a match made in heaven, no question about it. And we teamed up together and joined the Functional Medical Institute, and it's just been extraordinary. Who would have thought that at that time, having no one around, no staff, and now 25,000 clients later, and 7 books and 8 movies, I just look back at that and I go, wow, that's something. But I'm still grateful, and I'm still into helping people as everything that's in me with every single encounter, including this one.
Mhm.
I'm going to give it everything I got because I really want the sincerity, the desire to help people to shine through.
Mm. And were you drawn to integrative health because of what you were seeing as like the reliance on something's wrong with you, we're going to put you on this medication. Oh, that's not working. You've got those symptoms. Let's put you on this. And so people were just stacking medications. Was it a bit of a seeing what Western medicine was doing and thinking, surely there's a better way?
100%. I saw it. It wasn't right. And then I would look at these, I knew enough at that point to know that these wellness checks were a waste of time. They would run these blood panels that didn't do anything. They didn't say anything. It was just, I'd ask the question, why are you doing that? Because that's what we do. But this doesn't work. One of the biggest fallacies out there is that cholesterol is bad or LDL is bad. And I was like, something's wrong with this. And I would look at these fasting blood sugar readings called a hemoglobin A1C. And I realized that doesn't tell a story. Of course, your blood sugar low, you're fasting. But what about behind the scenes? And so I started asking about, why aren't you looking at particle sizes for your lipids? And why aren't you running panels such as fasting insulin in people's lives? You know what? I didn't get any answers. I didn't get any answers at all, other than we just don't do that. And that really bothered me because I felt like it was almost manipulative towards people. It was almost indoctrinating people to accept that disease processes and medications were just a part of getting old. And that is, to me, it just kind of set me off on a pathway of maybe righteous anger, I suppose. I don't know, man. But I wanted to fix it. And we haven't changed a bit since.
Yeah, I love it so much because I think that when we have people like you who are true cycle breakers and change makers, you're really driven by something powerful within because you're like life's purpose here. And one thing that I love about your story is that you were on a journey and then you really have stepped into your purpose in midlife. And I'm sure you were serving your purpose because you were serving others throughout your whole police career as well. But stepping in and going back to study, which must have felt like a big risk. I'm sure lots of people were telling you it was a big risk. Tell me what was going on in your inner world. What was that motivation and drive for you?
Well, when you're a police officer, where I was, there's a pretty good retirement package that you can achieve if you stay long enough. And I could have stayed 5 or 10 more years and got a whole bunch of guaranteed income every month. So I had to weigh it out. Do I want to take a chance and follow, as you said, what is a desired or designed purpose within my heart? Do I want to expand the idea of protection and service a little bit larger? And I felt like it was the right move. I felt like the right thing. I knew it was a risk. And people told me it was a risk. What if it doesn't work? What if? What if you don't have enough money? What if you don't make enough money? But I felt like the cause was greater than the fear. And I realized this too in my life. I've taken a lot of chances in life with business and things like that and people. But fear stands at the door of your greatest victory. And you got to walk past that, So in my mind, in my heart, I was fighting this internal thing. Should I, shouldn't I? Hearing the voices, don't go, no, yes, you need to do this. No way, no how, yes way, It was back and forth. And, those voices are always going on in all of us. They really are. It can go right back to the simplest concept of, should I eat this? Should I not eat this? There's voices saying to eat that. It won't hurt you, but it really will. There's voices that saying, don't eat that, but eat this because it gives you life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what was going on at the time. And I was always kind of a guy, as I told you earlier, that I felt like I had something to prove, being an only child, adopted, and not being the best baseball player in my team. I wanted to be a professional baseball player, and I achieved that. So I thought, you know what? I can do this. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to back away just because fear is standing there telling me I can't. And I can't, or you can't, was probably the thing that motivated me most of all, because I'm like, yeah, I can, man. I'm going to show you. And but I don't think it's really about other people. I think it was myself. I think it was like, I had to show myself that I could do this. And look, make no mistake about it. I'm still like that. I don't have it figured out. I'm still learning Every day I wake up, I realize the more I know, the more I don't know. And that's a powerful thing, especially in the career phase we're in with the technology and data and information moving so fast. So that's what was going on in my heart and mind at the time. And I know there's been listeners starting to struggle at these crossroads of life, and the best thing I can say is just sit back, get quiet, and figure out which way gives you the most peace, and then follow that road.
Yeah, I do love your answer because you mentioned quite a few things were external drivers, like external validation. I wanted to do this because of that and da-da. But the one where you really were resonant was when you made an inner decision to go for, was in alignment with you, which when you go from a place of alignment, you're unstoppable.
I think so. Since then, I've said this to people before. I don't, when you walk in your purpose, and the purposes of people's life change, and you might have different chapters of different purposes in the big book of your life, and I suppose I had a purpose here, a purpose there, a purpose there. And I don't think, you're really wasted purposes or wasted chapters. I think it builds to a story. Mm-hmm. And a story always is one that leads to victory. And I think that you really, when you walk in that purpose, there's something that fuels you inside of you that you can't tangibly understand, but you just know it's right. Maybe that intangible fuel is the jet fuel that fires the motivation of inspiration in your life, I suppose.
Yeah. And I love what you said as well around with the changes in technology and as you get older, how, and this has been my realization in the last few years of like thinking I spent a lot of my 20s and 30s thinking I needed to know everything and I wouldn't do stuff till I was ready. And I was a real, like, not a know-it-all, but like I was a big learner, but I felt like I needed to know in order to go. Yeah. And I have had this huge like epiphany in the last few years of like, I don't know anything. And that's actually really exciting.
It is, because the more, when you think you've got it figured out, you're in trouble.
Well, you're boxing yourself in and it
100%.
gets smaller and smaller. Whereas now I'm just like, wow, like it's everything. It's everywhere. I mean, this is part of Limitless, why I call this show Limitless.
Yeah. And you think about, the worst thing we did over the last several years was we followed a phrase that said something like this: trust the science, and science is not concrete. It's a moving target. It's always evolving. It could really define as this. If I break it down in layman's term, it's what's left over after you poked holes in what you think you know. That's all it is. It's so scientific thinkers are critical thinkers that try to tell you why possibilities are there and why impossibilities aren't. And they go back and forth on that window. And so I like, the concept of limitless because I think that infinite process where we can find possibilities within impossibilities is where the brilliance of discovery is found. And it's really cool and fascinating. And that's people thought Einstein was an idiot too. They thought he was insane for questioning what they thought was the gospel at the time, Mm-hmm. But we need to begin to question what we think we know because there's always room for improvement. There's always things we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit in terms of like people listening who may not have been to an integrative health practitioner, or the way that they assess the full body and bring the nervous system into it is so different to how your local doctor or GP, general practitioner, might do so. So could you like just walk through like if someone hasn't been to see a doctor like you before, what does it look and feel like, and how is it maybe some of the differences they might experience to what they've been used to doing by just showing up at their GP whenever something's felt off in their body?
Well, I think I'm a naturopath, which is much like, something you said. But, when someone comes into our offices, they're used to going to the GP and the GP is saying, what are your symptoms and what's wrong with you? That's what you focus on. There's a medication, you get out the door as quick as possible. Where we live, where we work, in people's lives is I don't disregard those things. And I ask where maybe they're not feeling the best in the world. But I will also ask what things are going well with them. And I try to focus 2/3 at least, or 3/4 of the time on what's going well so that what's going wrong is not the focus. Because if you focus on what's going wrong, what you throw gas on will burn the most. What you feed most will grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of get the dialogue of building trust, get to know them and realizing that they told me that something's not functionally well. Then I want to go back and figure out why it's not functioning well. Why do they have the symptoms they have? If we can go back upstream and figure out why the symptoms are they have or there, correct the dysfunction, the symptoms go away and disease processes, diagnoses, medications becomes irrelevant. And that's kind of the way we think. And even in our world, I'm thinking about, the exercise, sleep, stress management, movement, genetics, hormones, peptides, supplementation. And I'm interweaving that around, their emotional health, their spiritual belief systems, their intellectual capabilities, et cetera. And if you really look at that as the whole person concept, every person's unique. Every case is one. There are processes and protocols that probably work well for most people, but people get the idea that I'm special, I'm unique, and they care about me.
Mm-hmm.
And when a trustworthy relationship is established, generally speaking, good things happen.
Yeah. One of the things that I see in my coaching containers, which I always like to encourage people away from, is when they've attached themselves to a label that a doctor has given them, like you have anxiety or you're depressed. And so it actually, unfortunately, just human nature, we take it on as part of our identity. And it's the coaching I do. It's totally possible to resolve, unravel, recalibrate. But I just see in my line of coaching just how dangerous these labels can be for people. Yep. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
So I have a driver's license that says my name is Mark Sherwood. Mm-hmm. When somebody asks me for an ID, I might give the ID, whether it be a driver's license or a passport or whatever, that tells them who I am. I am Mark Sherwood, who happens to be a naturopathic doctor. That's what I am. That's what I do. But when you give somebody a diagnosis, instead of saying, my name is Fiona Walsh, they begin to say, my name is type 2 diabetes, or my name is anxiety, my name is ADHD. Then it becomes an ID card for them, and it begins to rename them, becomes their identity card. There's an acronym I use that's under the acronym of frauds, FRAUDS, like a fraud. A fraud is when someone takes your identity and uses it for their own good and steals your own. They benefit, you lose, right? And I look at that and the same fraudulent thing. They take away, that diagnosis takes away your identity. Now, frauds, if you will, can kind of be an acronym too, in a whole different angle, but it fits. Fear, resentment, anger, unforgiveness, disappointment, shame. And that begins to consume who you are as well if you begin to own those cards. And so in both of these aspects, diagnoses or even emotional focus, or unforgiveness, et cetera, we lose who we are, we become who that is. And that is always an unhealthy place. And, it's hard to get out of those things because they become ruts in your life. And before you know it, that's what you know. And it goes back to this. It's like the longer you've been in that little prison cell, that 8x8 prison cell, yeah, that's all you know. And you can't imagine getting out because you're too scared to get out there, even though it's better. You have been there so long, you got more comfortable in your own misery. And then misery does what? Loves company. So you begin to suck people in that believe like you do. Mm-hmm. And so it's a pathway of catastrophic failure.
Yeah,
of losing opportunity. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, complete spiral. In the work that you do when you go into the emotional and biological and energetic root causes, how often is trauma at the root?
Probably to a level most of the time.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Because today in our world, there's a lot of, you don't get a chance to release trauma today because we're reminded of it every day on social media. Mm-hmm. There's no time to be quiet because you're always stimulated by something. We got our cell phones with us, this, that, and the other all the time. And we're not separate from those things. So it's like a noise that's happening in your head and heart all the time. And I think that we lose quietude. the quietness, the calmness that we need to have. I'm a big believer in getting outside and getting some air, get some sunshine, getting a walk, take your shoes off, go ground or do something and go to the beach, go on a vacation, go on a date with my wife, and I don't want to talk about anything, so these are all important, necessary for human function, human successful function. And I think that trauma is at the center of all of it, because the longer you live on the earth, man, the more trauma you're going to have. It's just the way it is. But you can learn to deal with it a little bit easier if you're not living in it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And so how does your modality treat trauma?
When I hear somebody talking about, like when I go digging around, like what causes behaviors? Let's just use one example. Here is a little girl named Fiona who has a sister named Heidi. So Fiona and Heidi are growing up, and Heidi's always had this little skinny mini body, and Fiona's struggled a little bit with weight. Well, one day Dad comes in and says, boy, Fiona, why don't you just eat like your sister? Wow. That one moment in time could start a catastrophic occurrence in Fiona's life, that when she gets to be a teenager and adult, she could be dealing with anorexia or bulimia, eating disorders, purging, etc. And I see that a lot. Sometimes it's a word that happened, an occurrence that happened, and sometimes it's a broken home. Sometimes it's a dispute that happens, and it just builds that thing up inside of you so long, and that trauma never gets pulled out of the garden, so to speak. And it continues to grow and grow and grow until it becomes its own crop.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the interesting things that I see in all my coaching clients, because everyone's got degrees of trauma, is so often these comments that are made to them, or an experience where they were made to feel a certain way as a child. No one around them at the time had any idea the impact it was having on their little heart and soul. And so, and it's that sort of part of it, that it was maybe just one flyaway comment that their grandma made to their mum in the other room, and they didn't even hear them say it, but they're still holding that as a 50-year-old who's crying in my coaching containers because they have no self-worth because of that one comment. So I always joke to my other half, because we've got 3 young kids, that we should just have money aside for therapy, because no matter how hard we try, how consciously we parent, we'll still be messing them up.
Well, I think that, you mentioned something very key, is a lot of this happens when we're children.
Yeah.
And we're all, as adults, just big kids.
Oh, yeah.
We've just got, we're maybe big kids that have grown up, that have dealt with more things in life, and have now more tools to be more childish, I suppose. And it doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means that we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say, and get the idea that no one has control over my feelings, except me.
Yes.
No one, quote unquote, makes me feel a certain way. I just, I am that way because I choose to be that way. And I choose not to deal with the feelings I have,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's really sort of this empowerment and accountability and responsibility is coming through in a lot of your answers. Is this a key component of your work? Is that we take personal responsibility and accountability for who we are and how we show up in the world?
Yes, 100%. Because when I look at people, and I think that here, one of our mission statements is leading people down a pathway of true healing. People might have different definitions of what that might be, but it's at the core of really understanding empowerment. If I can give somebody control back of the things that really make their life better, increase their health span, I'm all for it. That's a good thing. And it's something that we should strive for every day, to give them their life back. And I think that's, once I see that happen, people begin to take control of their life and have an experience that gives them a fullness of life that I think is, opportunity for everybody, to certain levels. They're happier people, and they're almost full of a relief, like this weights came off their back.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I see a switch in people from is when you're boxed in and feeling labeled and constricted, we do live through the lens of fear and that we are limited. And when we're able to give people choice and they have the trust in order to exercise choice, that is when they start to see the whole thing flip and realize that they are actually limitless, and that limitless is about not being perfect. It's actually about owning all of your parts, in the messy, imperfect ones, as well as the ones that are your strengths or your superpowers that people love about you. But all of that is what makes you limitless, and stepping into that in a, embodied and empowered way.
Yeah, I think, look at life like, I don't like to focus on impossibilities. I like to focus on possibilities. Mm-hmm. Don't want to focus on limits. What are my limitless possibilities? And I think to use that word, but it's something we all can get if we really own the uniqueness of who we are, the specialness of who we are as human beings. They're just one of one. Just one of one. And even identical twins with the same DNA are going to turn out differently because of the epigenetic modification of that,
I've got identical twin.
One person, and it's if we realize the power behind that, man, that's truly one of the greatest epiphanies a person can have.
Yeah, I've got identical twin daughters.
So that, right? Yeah.
It is like, I actually feel like, as much as it was very challenging having 3 kids in 2 years, it's the biggest gift of life learning being a parent is number one, but when you're gifted 2 children that started as the same set of cells, and then you day by day get to deconstruct all of the things you thought about humans because they undo them for you in real time. Like, I used to think I was really great at predicting other people's behavior and emotions and stuff. And yes, I am an empath and I'm intuitive, so I'm fairly accurate. However, they blow, like, we can go to a new, like, an activity and I'll think one of them's going to be fine. It's the other one that's in the car, like, refusing to get out, crying and scared. And I'll be like, all right, well, there it goes again. Like, You cannot predict anyone's behavior.
You can't. And even though they got the same DNA, the effects of the environment upon them is unique. And so the inputs emotionally we have, the inputs in our mind and our thoughts, they do affect our genetic expression on an individual basis because 2 people don't think alike.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love it. It's so fun being a twin parent.
Oh yeah.
I'm interested in hearing some of your perspectives around, like, lifestyle as medicine, because I feel like we're in a world now where we have so much information and so many different products and services accessible to us that the wellness industry is completely saturated, but it's pretty overwhelming. And I think that lots of people talk about the noise, so should I be like fasting, or should I do my hot sauna and then my cold plunge, or which order should I do it? And then do I have my coffee or my green juice first? And then which order should I do my supplements? And we're obsessed with biohacking and quick fixes and all the things. And you can end up with a list of 150 things that you need to do every single day.
Yep.
And some people, when I do like an initial consult in my coaching, some of them are missing some of the foundational pillars or, bricks in their foundation. So I'd love to hear your perspective if we wiped all that stuff that I just listed that no one did 20 years ago off the table. What do you think are the core foundations or building blocks of lifestyle as medicine?
Well, I love what you said, because there's so much stuff I heard today that people think they need to have or think they need to do. And I'm not negating any of that you mentioned. That's great stuff, cold plunge, sauna, great, awesome. Those are good. However, none of that matters if you don't get the very core foundation of things right at the beginning. And those things are eating well, sleeping well, moving well, and de-stressing well. If you don't do those things well, you can take stuff, you can do stuff, but it's never going to get maximized in its potential if you don't have a foundation. A foundation is like everything above a good foundation can grow into a solid thing that can stand the resiliency of the life we have, that's challenging right now with all those inputs. And you have a perspective that actually understands that. And that's freeing, because I do a lot of the things you mentioned. Great. But I need to eat right. That's eat real food. I need to sleep right. That means try to get my 8 hours a day. And that means exercise. The only day I don't exercise is the day I'm dead. The more you move, the more you live, the less you move. That's called rigor mortis, folks, right? And then de-stressing means I don't need to be on my cell phone all the time. I don't need to be on social media all the time. I don't need to be in dialogue that's inflammatory. I don't need to do that. I need to work on peace and being calm. There's a time for stress. There's a time not to stress. And I think those 4 things right there are the core.
Yeah. The not unplugging from our life or our phone at all is I see it everywhere. I remember when my phone got broken a year ago and I was just out in public for the first time without my phone, and you actually become acutely aware that everyone's walking around like this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's horrifying. But then once I got my new phone, I was back to doing that probably within a week, because we're creatures of habit. But and we are like with young children around, we put our phones away and they're out of reach. We don't have them at the dinner table. And this is no shade on anyone if they have phones at the dinner table, because everyone does life their way. But I have got some boundaries, but I know that I was actually talking to my other half this morning about, when you're like tired or run down or not well, or things are not going well emotionally for you, it's just hilarious because we're our own worst enemies. Because what do? You're tired, so you have another double espresso. Well, no, your body probably needs the ginger tea. And at nighttime, you're too tired to read your book. So I'll just flick on Instagram for an hour instead. Whereas even just sitting in silence would be, you know what I mean? But we're our own worst enemies.
We are, and it's we get addicted to those things. It's a dopamine hit. And it's like dopamine is a drug, and it drives this satisfaction or thrill or happiness emotion inside of us. And it's real. It's not something you're making up. Mm-hmm. Like today, on my ring, my finger is kind of tan right there. You can see on the index finger, right? So it is because I wear an ultra human ring. Well, today I put it on the charger and left it. And I thought I had went to work undressed. Honestly, I was like this. And then I had to catch myself and go, wait a minute. I don't need to worry about that today. It's kind of cool not having something on my finger. Kind of cool not looking at my data. It's fine, And so it can happen to anybody. Mm-hmm. And it can happen to me. And I can, I got to stop that. That's funny you mentioned that, it just happened to me today.
Yeah. Because I think the data can be useful in terms of personal accountability and giving you information about your body that you otherwise may not be aware of. But I think as well, a lot of my listeners, and myself included, because we're natural high performers, it can become a performance thing. And so that's what creeps in a lot of the time. I forget, or a need to know, the tracking. I need to know, if my Garmin watch is on charge and I've forgotten to put it on before bed, I have to sometimes lie in bed and be like, you're going to be fine not getting that data tonight.
Your Garmin watch.
You're actually going to be fine in the morning, because until a few years ago, you didn't know anything about your sleep other than some mornings you woke up going, well, that was a pretty terrible sleep and I feel a bit tired.
That's exactly right. And a lot of times we get so used to the technology even too, that it becomes addicting. And that's good stuff. I mean, it's not bad stuff. That's good stuff, but you could become over connected, over addicted to good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. We say, Mark, we always ask this question to people at Limitless. It's the transformation can often happen in small, intentional steps. And it's rarely these big quantum leaps that unlock long-lasting change. It's sort of those consistency of micro movements. So I want to know, based on your incredible life journey that you shared with us today, what is one small step that our listeners could take today or this week to unlock their limitless potential?
You start a day with a plan. You don't plan, you plan fail. You have to have a plan. And there's basic things that you do. I mean, I get up every day. This is what I do at the beginning of the day. What your plan is executed at the beginning. It's the first step going in the right direction. And if you can execute the first step going in the right direction, that's the best thing ever. And so I get up every day and I have a routine that I do. I get up, I get quiet, I pray, I meditate, I go to the gym, then I go to work. That's what I do. Boom, boom, boom. And a predictable plan creates reliability. It creates trustworthiness. Guess what? In you, in your
Yes,
work.
100%.
So that's the greatest thing you do is have a plan and take one step, first one in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that the little acts of consistency are underrated in what they do for self-worth, because when you commit to doing something and you don't do it, you're the one letting yourself down, and you're the one that's eroding self-trust that when I say something, I'm going to do it. And that little voice in your head, which we've talked about already, the ego is going to be like, oh, don't do it today. You're a bit tired. You don't need to. And like, then the other one's going to come and go, oh, remember, you don't stick things out. That's okay. You always do it for a week or two. And it's so just be aware of those little voices in your head. They are trying their best to keep you safe and familiar, but they're also stopping you from building consistent habits. And what they lead to is deep self-trust that what you say you're going to do, you do, and you're keeping promises to yourself, they're the most important promises that you make.
100%. Couldn't agree more. That if you can't keep the word to yourself, how are you going to keep it to anybody else?
Absolutely. Yes, so true. I love it. Okay, Mark, rapid fire. What is your superpower?
My determination. 100%. I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm going to keep on going.
Oh, I love that. Have you always been super determined?
Probably a little bit. I think it boiled down to as a kid being told you can't and having people tell you can't, and you just dig deep and find why you can.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I love it. What's the biggest misconception that people have about you?
Because I've got muscles and because I'm a big guy, I must be some kind of a bully, but I actually cry more than anything else. I'm a very softy. People deep. It's kind of unique what people see, what they get.
Yeah, you're like big and muscly on the outside, but a little softy on the soft and cuddly on the inside. Oh, I love that. That's such a beautiful combination. What's a part of yourself that you used to hide that you now choose to lead life with?
Probably my emotions. I was taught as a young man not to cry. Men don't do that, and now I don't care. I'll cry at a happy story. I'll cry at a sad time. And I don't care, because it's freeing. And sometimes when you get tears in your eyes, you can see a little bit better.
Mm. Was one of the shifts for you that when the breaking point moment you shared when your mom had passed away, is that when that started to sort of unravel for you?
I think so. That was kind of that month time where like, you know what? I'm not going to try to be tough here because I'm not.
Yeah. There's no need to be tough.
Mm.
When you hear the word limitless, the name of this show, what are 3 words or feelings that are evoked in you?
Possibility is one. Potential is another. And probably the most powerful one is hopefulness.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And finally, Mark, if you're having a bit of a low day or your vibe's needs a little uplift, what song do you like to put on to lift your mood?
What song? That's a good one. For me, it's not really a song. It's more of a melody. Mm-hmm. A melody that's soothing and soft, that makes me, it brings my spirit kind of at a lower, more calm place. So I think it's more of the soft melody that brings me there.
Yeah, so it sort of calms you down to reconnect back in. Ah, beautiful. No one's ever answered like that before. So I appreciate you. And that resonates. It resonates deeply. So that's beautiful. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on Limitless today. Your story, your vulnerability, your wisdom, it's just been so wonderful having this conversation. I know everyone listening will have lots of takeaways from you. So thank you for being part of the show today.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you so much having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Limitless. If you enjoyed today's episode and love hearing the stories of courageous cycle breakers, I'd be grateful if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your feedback not only helps others discover the show, but it also amplifies our mission to unlock emotional freedom and true potential. Every review makes a difference in helping more people embrace their limitless life.